Hello, this is a tutorial for Meditation 1B by Lubomyr Melnyk. I've made other videos. I've done a tutorial on Meditation 1A, Meditation 1C, and Meditation 2A. Haven't done 1D yet. Now, you should probably do, if you're watching this as someone kind of quite interested, you should watch Meditation 1A and 1C first. I think they're easier to play and maybe even nicer sounding at first. The Meditation 1B is more difficult to enjoy and just more technically tricky. I remember struggling with it when I was first given this piece. Be that as it may, I'll give my usual caveats. The meditations are beginner pieces, so they do not, if anyone is watching this kind of all skeptical, these pieces do not represent Lubomyr's music at all. In the sense of how, sorry, that's a terrible thing to say. They do not represent they do not give you a good sense of what his concert pieces are like. These meditations are instead designed to get you used to certain ways of thinking and feeling that are necessary for continuous music. But they're not supposed to be technically that challenging. The notes are not supposed to be difficult. They're supposed to be simple building blocks that nevertheless illustrate important concepts. Yeah, they're introductory exercises. I'm wary of making this video too long, because I always make them way too long. So I'm gonna outsource a lot of my discussion to the discussion I gave in Meditation 1C and 1A, especially 1A, because a lot of what I said applies to all pieces. So I'm just gonna get into it. I'm gonna play through this meditation briefly and a little bit faster than perhaps you should if you're doing this as genuine practice. Be mindful that you can play this much slower than what I'm doing, and you can hold each figure for much longer or for differing amounts of time. But let me just play the piece. Okay. You should also know, if you haven't played or heard a meditation before, that they are meditations. So they're supposed to have these kind of droning melodies that your ear can pick up on, but you can also kind of really sink into the music as the performer, and you can let your mind rest on the sound, and you can let your mind wander and get used to certain kinds of mindless feeling. So this might not sound like a normal piano piece. ideally you would hold most of that for much longer than I held it as a practice piece. And there's always a difference between practicing and performing, especially for meditation. When you practice meditation, you want to meditate. You don't want to give just a brief run through. So okay, let me explain now how to play this piece hopefully without repeating myself too much from previous videos. But some general remarks. This piece is predominantly on the black keys, or yeah, in almost all the figures you have at least half of your hand on the black keys, and that is tricky usually. In continuous music, you really ought to be playing with your eyes closed. This is where you maximize your feelings, your contact with the piano, blah, blah, blah. And managing the black keys with your eyes closed, they're much easier to slip off, much easier to miss. You're fumbling in the dark to find the note, and it's much easier to miss it. This also requires more strength and much better hand posture too. So this is what I really struggled with when I first had this piece. Especially I just struggled with it across the board. I didn't have the requisite strength to like really confidently hold down the black keys at speed for extended durations. And maybe some people are listening and wondering, what the hell do I mean by strength, when obviously it is easy to press a piano key. You don't need any strength. A young child can do it. But you do need strength to play continuous music, or even normal music. I mean, very well-trained pianists will have quite strong fingers. This is just a well-known principle. You have, I think classically you have that, they're called the Hanon, I think, the Hanon exercises. In continuous music, the same applies. You do need certain strength, kind of deceptive strength, or not deceptive, but invisible strength. Like, it doesn't seem strenuous when you're looking at it, but actually a lot of continuous music is very strenuous, and it does develop your muscles in different ways. Okay, so watch Meditation 1A video for more detailed comments on the same, but your pedal should be down throughout the whole piece. You should be playing very legato, so that is normal legato. That would be considered legato by a conventional classical pianist for the most part, but here I mean like real super legato. Like you like take this pattern. It's a CEA triad, and I am not lifting off my fingers at all. When I play that C stays down for the duration, and then I briefly kind of not even lift my thumb up, but just kind of raise the key, reduce my pressure, and then hit down again. I'm not even really lifting my thumb off the key. Like you are maintaining, you ought to maintain very strong, firm, and consistent contact with the piano in most continuous music, but in a meditation like this as well. That might mean you have to play slow. That's fine. It's okay to play slow in these pieces. And having your fingers down firmly is necessary to access the right state of mind. So you're playing these long droning figures, fluxes, whatever, and the part of the point is so that you feel what it's like to have the two hands in synchrony despite playing incongruous patterns. So that usually there's a 2-note thing in the left hand and a 3-note thing in the right. Part of that feeling is also the feeling of your keys right down to the board, and kind of calmly managing this, not pressing with great tension, like really, oh, I've got to, exercise this index finger so it can come down forcefully, and like each move requires some kind of conscious action. Not like that. The goal is to find out how to make this autonomous. Like your hand just understands what to do, and it will play firmly and confidently, but without any stress. And for this, well, I mean, this takes a long time to do in the full sense of continuous music, and I've been playing for years and I don't have it yet, but like some basic points for that is and most pianists would agree, whether continuous pianist or not, your wrist should be up. Your wrist should support the whole thing. Lubomyr often says stuff like you should have your consciousness in your wrist or in your palm. Like this is the center of your action. Your fingers are not central. Your fingers are not important. You should almost not feel your fingers or even your hand really at all. There should just be a sense of balance and strength here. A sensation of keys firmly down, but no particular attention given to movement or specific fingers. No particular attention given to, the individual finger action, like stabbing down, so that each motion, like when you play like this, as even quite advanced classical pianists, I have seen them do, this is maybe okay for what they're doing, but it does require great tension in these fingers, and you want to have no tension at all. So the meditation is partly there to teach you how to relax. And if you can play this piece on the black keys fluidly in a relaxed way, then you've done quite well. Okay, let me just start talking about the notes now. So the first flux is this. The right hand is doing C, E, A, all natural notes. The left hand is doing A and E. The natural thing to do is to have a 1 and a 5 playing this, but actually we use the second finger in this piece. And I think Lubomyr has put this in the score because he wants you to have a slight stretch sensation and figure out how to manage that in a comfortable way. If your hands are a little bit smaller, so that this stretch is more significant, an important idea is using your wrist to swivel around and support your movements. So for a more extreme example, if you're doing, like if you're playing A, E, and then A the next octave up, do not do one single splayed chord, even though many people would find that comfortable. You want to be using the wrist motion to support you going from one place to the other. So okay, you're rocking back and forth in your wrist is raised, it is relaxed. You're not really pushing with your individual fingers, your wrist is supporting, it's putting weight on the fifth finger, it's putting weight on the second finger. You're holding them down to the bone, to the base of the keyboard. You're also playing in a duple rhythm. You're not playing triplets. You're not doing. You're playing duple. So the left hand is somewhat dictating the rhythm. And don't go much faster than this either. That second pattern is you are playing, your left hand is now doing A, E, and then F in a 3-note thing. And the right hand is playing C, F, A. So, introduce the F. and you should hold this for a serious length of time. You will probably not find it as comfortable to play that fast, and maybe you shouldn't play that fast or even that loud. Meditations can be soft. I did not play this one in a soft way, but you can play them softly. Now, there's an important point about rate here. So already in the first bar, there's something interesting you can do, which doesn't really exist in normal piano music. I mean, firstly, you can change exactly whenever you want. So you could hold that pattern for 3 bars, 2 bars, 4 bars, 5 bars, whatever. I mean, there kind of are no bars in continuous music. The second point is you can change right hand at a different time to when you change left hand, and you can vary what Lubomyr calls the rate. So allow me to bore you a little bit by talking about this, because it is an excellent mental exercise. So when you're doing the A minor chording, you can decide to enter the F chording a little bit sooner, while the left hand is still doing a 2-note drone on the A and the E. And then I introduced the left hand, but that was not interesting, because what ended up happening was my left and my right hands, when they were doing the 3-note patterns together, they were playing together. They were both starting on the bass of their chord and rising in synchrony. What would be interesting is if you could have them kind of offbeat. So let's say when the left hand is on the E, which is halfway through its climb, the right hand is at the start of its climb. How can you achieve this? Well, you can experiment, but I think the best way is to maybe change one of the hands first, let it run for a bit, and then consciously change the next hand at the right time. So something like this. So I made a little cut because I goofed up, but let me resume. So I was talking about the rate, and here's an example of how you might enter a different rate. So you change the right hand first, and then I think the easiest way is to let the right hand thumb begin and suddenly decide to introduce the left hand thumb on the F at that time. So now you've changed it from going in a synchronous climb, like they're both going up at the same time, to almost like a contrary motions. So the left hand, when the right hand goes up at first, the left hand goes down, and then they both go up, and then the left hand goes up and the right hand goes down, like it's out of sync. So hopefully you can hear now that the thumb notes, the thumbs are on the F and the C instead of, as normal, the A and the C. So that's one variation you can do. You could also vary it so that the right hand thumb comes down when the left hand is on the E note. So that's a little trickier to achieve, but I'll try and do it. So the first time the right hand thumb came down when the left hand was on the E, and the second time I changed that chording, I put it in the F mode. So the left hand was on the F when the right hand was on the bass note. It's good to practice making these variations and finding them easy to do. So you're playing mindlessly, well, not mindlessly, but you're playing peacefully, and the hands are generating the music themselves, and you introduce this modulation just by kind of thinking, you know, this is what I want to hear, and then it happens. So it will necessarily require you to kind of pause the left hand motion like half a beat and then resume it on the new introduced note, which can be psychologically a little troubling, but this is okay in continuous music to miss a beat when you're transitioning, or to kind of add some phantom other notes to bring yourself into a different rate of kind of how the right hand corresponds to the left. It's an important general concept, but so in the first bar of this meditation, there is already the opportunity to play with that, and it is a very good exercise. Now, moving on, you go back and forth between those two patterns. Now, what comes next? So you're maybe playing this one. Then you move to the next. So the next is the right hand is doing D, F, A, and the left hand is doing D and F, D and F. And then you alternate by doing D, G, A with the fourth finger, and D and G in the left hand. Just go back and forth between those two. And as I said in other meditation videos, one of the things you really should be doing is listening to the overtones and the sub-melodies that come up. The meditation 1A and 1C that I've played before were much softer. This one has a stronger driving energy. So this exact same chording appears in meditation 1A, but you play it much more pensively and softly. Here, it's much more driving. In particular, the G notes are quite strong, and it's good to let your mind fall on a particular tone. Because again, you're meditating, so you're sitting with this, you're maintaining, you're going back and forth between these patterns for quite a long time if you're practicing this kind of faithfully, and you can let your mind focus on various different things, all the while kind of focusing on remaining calm. Now, it's common that the fourth and fifth fingers are a little bit too weak, so I really recommend an upright wrist kind of positioned roughly over where the fourth and fifth fingers are for this. Because if you're doing at speed, like this constant hammering with the fourth and the fifth, you can find yourself fumbling if your hands are not too well developed yet. So allow your wrists to help you, allow your forearm to support you. Like the whole body can be used here. Okay. The next pattern is we introduce the E in both. So right hand replaces its F with an E, and the left hand replaces its F with an E. So you're doing D, E, D, E, and then D, E, A, D, E, A. And of course, you change into this when you want to. You know, it's at will. And then you've now come back to your starting position of the A and the E in the left and the C, E, A in the right. So there were some individual kind of back and forth patterns, but there's an overall cyclic flux. So you can go through those various chordings, you can come back to the A, go through it several times, get used to this feeling of the rolling tones and whatever. So there's stuff to play around with there. Then you can move on to the next section. So this is where the black notes come in. So the first thing to do, and I should remind you by the way that your eyes, before you can say you really can do this piece, you should be able to do it with your eyes closed. Now, here, the left hand lifts up onto the A flat and the E flat, and the right hand is playing also the same. So it was doing C, E, A, now it's doing C, E flat, A flat. So it's really important to maintain exact synchrony between the two hands here. It is very troubling to have your eyes closed and try to unconsciously, at least like at first it was, to have your eyes closed and to unconsciously try and raise your left hand to the black keys. This is not necessarily an easy thing to do. So if you're watching my hands, what was I doing? I was kind of raising my wrist a bit to take the pinky finger up, and then my second finger is already in the right place basically, so that's fine. And when I came down, I kind of just, my thumb is already hovering above the E, so I just let it fall onto the E and then swivel my wrist a little bit and let the fifth finger fall onto the A. So it can be done in quite a natural way, but you want to try not to lose control. Don't do that too fast. Make sure you are doing kind of more or less note to note, one to one. And when you're on the black keys, the raised wrist is now very important and the raised arm is important. You should have your wrist still above your fingers. So you should be coming up to here and really supporting what you're doing. And with this bigger stretch, you can allow, again, your wrist to swivel back and forth. Another mistake that I used to make is my fingers would be way too far up the black keys. And it's much harder to push them here, so try and stay close to the edge as possible. So also make it easier to slide onto the white keys. So, okay. The same general principles apply. You want to be holding the keys down either all the way or almost all the way, and you want a closed hand. You don't want to be splaying too much. You want the fingers that aren't playing to be more or less resting calmly on the keys. Now what comes next, after you go back and forth a few times, is the left hand drops down to this G flat. Now this is more difficult with your eyes closed because you have to reach for this empty space. You have to imagine that this G flat is there. You kind of really hope that you hit it and you don't miss it. And I used to miss it a lot. So it's something to practice. So maybe when you swing up to the E, when you swing down, you just swing down slightly farther and you come down to the G flat. And then when you swing up a little bit more so that it's not your second finger now on the E flat, but it's your thumb. So you're doing G flat, E flat. And the right hand was doing C, E flat, A flat. Now it's doing C, G flat, A flat. So this is an easy change to the right hand. The fourth finger is already in the right position. It just needs to activate. Thing that I did there is I just moved the left hand down from E flat to D flat and moved the right hand up from C to D flat. And you should try and maintain this driving sound. Another thing is you should allow your thumb to pick out stronger notes, or allow your hand to accentuate notes at will. So you get these kind of weighty thumb notes where it's not strictly emphasized, but nevertheless I hope you can hear this is kind of thrumming or throbbing, and that line of tone carries on throughout the piece. It changes with different chords, but you should be able to hear a line of tone continuing throughout the piece. Another thing is, so here the whole of your right hand is on the black keys and all three fingers You're using 3 fingers for the back keys. So your wrist is above, but also there's a certain buoyancy that's useful. So it's harder to play on the back keys, but like, for example, when I go from C, when I reach up to the G flat and the A flat, I can just lift my whole wrist. So I'm like this, I'm still cool, calm and collected, but I've got this kind of buoyancy. I'm kind of springing off the G flat, so to speak. Don't exaggerate it, it's a small motion. This also means that when I come back onto the D flat, I can just really fool with my thumb. I don't need to press, I don't need to go like that and kind of get thumb cramps like I used to do. I can just, calmly come back to it with this little bit of buoyancy. And I can also accentuate this D flat at will to create this tone, and it's much more easeful, right? You're doing a meditation, it should be easeful. So hand posture goes a long way in that, as well as your mental posture. So okay, that's that. The next pattern is you move the left hand to an A flat, D flat alternation, and the right hand goes D flat, F, A flat. Now this F is a white note, so you are all on the black notes. So this introduces, I don't know, a bit of color. It's quite nice to calm down from the driving motion and let this one be a bit softer, I find. And this really is soft singing. The whole rest of the piece now is less about driving force, although there is some of that, but you want to have elements of soft singing. So when you're playing, you want to, maybe you can't hear it at first, but you want to try and hear it. You should be able to find it. So you're now playing D flat, F, A flat, B flat in the right hand. So it's a 4-note thing. The right hand has dropped down from A flat, D flat. It's now doing G flat, D flat again. Really make sure you're in sync here, and that you're in control. You're not doing like, okay, maybe you want to go fast and you're doing that, but this is not controlled. It's kind of soup. You're like, your whole weight was on the first note and you're kind of just splurging or scrambling over the last notes. You want to have calm, measured accentuation and weight on all the notes, and the A flat and the B can sing out softly, and you should listen for that. So this is just what we had before, and then you go back and forth. Can help you to swivel a bit in managing this right hand figure. And part of the exercise here is to manage kind of calmly transitioning between 3 and 4 note patterns in the left hand, in the right hand, without completely losing your rhythm. And to have the left hand do a 2-note pattern the whole time. So everything is incongruous here, but there is a calmness to be found, and the point of the exercise is to find that calmness. Okay, so you're doing this. Then you do something a little bit crazy, which is you were doing G flat, D flat, and you drop down now to the F, and you're doing this sweeping 4-note thing. So you're doing F, B flat, D flat, and then F, but 1 octave up. I struggled with this a lot. So, in particular, the change. back and forth between these two patterns. One little change has been made, which is when you're back to where you were with the left hand, the right hand is now playing D flat, E flat, A flat, B flat. So it's a slightly different singing tone. When you drop down to this big pattern, the right hand resumes D flat, F, A flat, B flat. So this is a lot of stretching, and there's one so don't do this too fast, but one particularly important thing to at least try and have in your mind is not only is your wrist raised, but your wrist is carrying you along with the tone and up the keyboard. You are not playing a big stretch like this. Do not do that. You should kind of start calm and closed on the lower F. You move up to the B flat. Still have your finger on the F maybe. Your hand is still quite small and closed. You're now starting to pivot on that B flat. Your wrist is taking all of the balance. You fall on that D flat with your index finger, and you're still pivoting calmly, and then you've now swung over at quite a serious angle, so like you're angled quite significantly into the keyboard, ideally. And now, by the time you've kind of swiveled past this D calmly, your thumb is in exactly the right place to fall on the F. And then you have to swing back again. Now I'm doing a bit of an exaggerated motion, but this is the ideal motion, and I confess, I don't do that quite perfectly. Like, when I'm actually in motion and playing properly, I know in my mind's eye, like, this is what I picture myself doing, but in reality I often don't. Like, I try to, but probably you could have caught me having slightly larger hand stretches, and you probably could have caught me abusing my idea of you need to have a small, closed, relaxed hand. But knowing that this is what you should be doing is already very helpful. It guides you towards proper motion. In particular, the wrist swivel being the most important thing. So do not kind of hammer your way through a big stretch at speed, just let your wrist carry you through the journey. This takes a very long time to properly get used to, and I still haven't quite, but have that in your mind when you're doing this. And reminder, your eyes should be closed. Section. You were doing G flat, D flat in the left hand, and you were doing D flat, E flat, A flat, B flat in the right hand. Now in the left hand you play G flat, E. In the right hand you just play D flat, E flat, A flat. So you drop from a 4-note to a 3-note. Exercise is to manage this transition between 3 and 4-note patterns in a calm way without breaking your rhythm and breaking your synchrony, and sinking your fingers in, letting it sing, all the rest of it. So you fluctuate between those two for a bit. You're coming near the end now. So what I've done here is I actually should be doing A flat, D flat, and I'm doing in the left hand, and I'm doing D flat, F, A flat. So I was doing this. I bring my outer left hand fingers in, by one tone to do A flat, D flat, and I'm doing D flat, F, A flat in the right hand. I go back to the old position. Like I just go back and forth now between these two. And I finish up on this A flat, D flat alternation and D flat, F, A flat in the right hand. Letting it sing out, and now I just never change my left hand at all. So I just keep that the same, but I still introduce the 4-note pattern. Okay, so that's the piece. Especially on the black keys with these kind of weightier feeling notes, you really want to feel that weight. You want to feel like you're giving out measured tones. You must keep your control. I struggled with this piece a lot. I kept messing up the changes or going too fast or whatever. But it feels very good when you do it, but you have to stay calm and measured. You have to remember this is a meditation, and I think this particular meditation challenges you in that way more than the others. The others are kind of obviously, or more obviously, meditative, but this one feels slightly more strenuous, and you just have to remember, actually, this can be done in a calm way. Yeah, for now, this is all I have to say about this piece.